It took 2 heavy swings of the axe before the head finally came loose. The first strike should have been enough, back when my father was strong and swift. But the dull blade only bit halfway through the neck, smashing into the spine with a sickening crack. Blood burst from the gaping wound, spilling like dark rivers down the weathered stump my father had chosen for the task. I caught the haunted look in my brother's eyes as he watched the wood darken from brown to crimson, the red spreading like a stain. The axe hissed as it was pulled free, slick with gore. The second swing landed squarely on the same spot, splitting bone and muscle. Within seconds, the gruesome task was done. The head tumbled from the body, rolling over the rough bark. "We did her a good favor, boys," my father said, yanking the blood-stained axe free from the weathered stump and pushing the headless body aside. His grey eyes, usually so sharp, carried a heavy mourning as they flicked over to my brother's troubled face. He placed a weathered hand, scarred and freckled by years of sun, firmly on Zander's shoulder. His voice softened but held steady. "A sheep with broken legs cannot live the life of a normal sheep. We ended her misery. One day, you boys will take over this farm, and you'll have to face moments like this, just as I have." Zander squeezed his father's hand, forcing a small smile. "May that day be very far," he said, voice steady, but eyes flickering with the weight of those words. Father returned the grin, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's get this sheep ready for the trip back. We've eased her hardship, and in return, the gods have blessed us with food for tonight's table." Being the eldest of his 2 children and considering my father's age, I took it upon myself to prepare the now 2 parts of this newly deceased animal for the trip back home. I dragged the red-stained torso of the sheep onto our home, made stretcher constructed of sticks, logs and twine, and tossed the lifeless head onto the body while my brother and father headed on back to the house, which to my relief was. As they walked away, I stole a moment to gaze out over the town. The sun stretched a bright path of gold from its sinking orb to the shore, dancing across the gentle waves of the blue sea. The fading light always wrapped me in a quiet warmth, a small comfort amid the encroaching night. But the town behind that glow offered no such peace. We lived on a modest sheep farm just beyond the borders of Talunboika, a small village of barely 200 souls, nestled in a valley that spilled toward the sea. Towering green mountains crowned with snow-white peaks cradled the town, and the weather seemed forever balanced between gentle warmth and cool ocean breeze. Talunboika was one of the smaller settlements on the Kiabrot continent, and to me, one of the harshest. The townsfolk were simple and kind enough, if you overlooked the occasional drunken brawl or petty theft. But when it came to my family, their kindness was a thin veil over something colder, something unspoken and unyielding. In his younger days, my father was a towering, robust man with hazel hair. 25 years old when he first laid eyes on my mother. Even now, he describes that moment like feeling the warmth of the sun for the very first time. He speaks of her sparkling blue eyes, like twin sapphires catching the light, long, golden hair that trailed behind her like flickering flames in the wind, and a slender frame that carried itself with the quiet confidence of royalty. Her skin was flawless, so radiant it could make even the god of beauty envious. Bitter, solitary grandfather had bought her from a traveling slave trader to work as a cook and cleaner in their home. But behind my grandfather's back, she and my father met in secret, stealing moments wherever they could. Their love grew fierce and unyielding. Then, when my grandfather mysteriously disappeared years later, They married and had my brother and me. The people of Talonboika never accepted this. Though no proof linked my parents to my grandfather's disappearance, their marriage branded our family as outcasts. We were exiled to the outskirts of town. As sons of despised parents, Zander and I bore the brunt of cruel taunts and bullying at the town's only school. We were forced to be taught at home by our mother, which in truth had its advantages. In her prime, my mother was an exceptional educator. She taught us not just to read and write, but how to defend ourselves and hunt, should the need arise. She was the only woman in Talonboika skilled in swordsmanship and archery, a fact that unsettled the townsfolk even more. Each morning she woke us with the sunrise, calling us to our first meal before the day's lessons began. After a second meal, when the sun stood high overhead, she led us through hours of sword and bow training until the light dipped low behind the opposite mountains. When my mother grew older, our formal lessons ended, but Zander and I continued training on our own, weaving practice between chores on the farm. In those hours we dreamed boldly, facing down trolls from the withering woodlands to the north, or standing against corrupted elementals haunting the ruins of the aspects to the west. Adventure was a constant whisper in our minds, yet we never dared abandon our family or home. The setting sun, tracing its shimmering path across the blue ocean, always reminded me of those distant dreams, magnificent adventures waiting just beyond the horizon. A sudden slap cracked across my upper back, jolting me from my thoughts. I spun around, startled and a little irritated, to find my brother grinning mischievously. "This sheep isn't going to walk itself back to the house," he teased, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. "Mum says quit daydreaming and get moving so she can start dinner." Though 2 years younger, my brother was at least 2 heads taller than me. A lanky, mischievous boy, with a soft heart beneath the teasing grin. We were different in more ways than one. I often wondered if we were truly brothers, if not for our shared traits. Our father's messy hazel hair and our mother's sparkling blue eyes. He definitely inherited Dad's height, while I took after Mum's more normal stature. But I claimed the brawny build, broad and strong, while he was lean and wiry. His advantage when it came to speed. He liked to keep his face clean-shaven, while I favoured a thicker beard, thinking it lent me a manlier air. Both of us preferred a weekly haircut from our mother, unlike most men in the village who let their hair grow long like the women. Long hair only got in the way during swordplay. "If you're so eager to get it back to the house, then why don't you carry it?" I teased. Zander laughed, clapping a hand on my shoulder as we walked toward the stretcher cradling the lifeless sheep. "We both know you're the brawn and I'm the brains, Ivan." "I build the stretcher, you haul it." I grunted, grabbing the front end and dragging the carcass across the field where we had found it struggling before its final rest. Our cottages sat nestled in the heart of 8 fields owned by our family. To the north lay 3 equal-sized fields for crops, 3 more to the south for grazing. 1 field each to the east and west was reserved for herding sheep, whose wool we sheared and sold in town. In the centre of it all stood 2 small cottages and a stable housing our 2 horses, Chester and Hazel, young, sturdy beasts our father had bought to help with farm work. Our parents' home was built of stone, with creeping vines wrapping around the walls and a thatched straw roof crowning it. Wooden windows framed the walls, and a single wooden door stood guard at the entrance. It wasn't large, just 2 bedrooms, one shared by Zander and me, the other by our parents, alongside a kitchen and dining area. When I turned 18, my parents cleared a patch beside their home so Sander and I could build our own small dwelling. Modelled after their house, it served mostly as a place to sleep. Since we spent most of our days helping with whatever needed doing on the farm. Once we reached the house, I carefully set the stretcher down beside the small open area my mother used to clean and prepare game for dinner. She must have heard us because moments later, the old wooden door creaked open and she stepped outside. Dressed in a faded dark brown dress streaked with stains from years of cooking and cleaning, she wore a white apron over it, also marked with wear. Her silver-grey hair was tied neatly up, out of the way of her work. Despite her age, her kind blue eyes still held a wisdom that made me feel grounded. "Did you get lost on your way home, Ivan?" she asked, her voice steady but with a faint edge of urgency. "The sun's nearly gone, and the meat's still not ready for cooking." She brushed a stray silver strand from her brow, eyes scanning me with quiet expectation. "Sorry, Mother," I said, stepping aside and pushing the lifeless animal off the stretcher. "I got a little distracted, but I'll help you with the preparations." "Nonsense," she replied firmly, pulling an old but razor-sharp skinning knife from a pouch at her waist. "You two get inside and clean yourselves up. I'll make quick work of this. Dinner won't be long. Your father wants to speak with you both. So get ready and attend him when you're done." Before I could protest or offer help again, Sander clapped a playful arm around my neck and began guiding me toward the front door. Inside, warm candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Wax dripped in slow trails down the sconces. At the center, our father sat at the four-seater wooden table, his head bowed low as he murmured to himself. His shadow wavered behind him like a ghost in the firelight. "Father?" Zander's voice was tentative as he stepped forward. Startled, father looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Boys!" His voice wavered, then cleared with a deep throat clearing. "I thought I heard your mother say you both needed to get cleaned up. Go wash, get ready for dinner. There's much we need to discuss tonight." His gaze drifted away, fixating on a candle by the window, his thoughts lost in its flickering flame. I glanced over at my brother. His face was drawn, eyes heavy, with the same concern I felt about father's strange behavior. I could tell he wanted to ask questions, but I cut him off before a word escaped his lips. "Come on, Zander. Let's get ready. This time." I put my arm around his shoulders and gently steered him toward the kitchen area just behind where father sat. The metal bowl for washing was already filled by mother with warm, soapy water, ready to wash dirt from our skin before dinner. We reached the basin and both dipped our hands into the foamy water. I cupped my hands together, scooped up some water, closed my eyes, and splashed it over my face. When I opened my eyes, I caught my reflection in the glass window. Next to me, Zander was silent, staring down at his hands as he scrubbed away the grime, lost in thought over what we had just heard. "I'm sure it's nothing too serious," I whispered, trying to reassure him as I rubbed my hands in the darkening water. Zander always worried about our parents. His greatest fear was losing them. We both knew their time was coming. The years weighed on them, but the thought still haunted us. "I've never seen father talk to himself before," Zander murmured, grabbing a rough cloth to dry his hands and face. "He worries me. Ever since we killed the sheep, he's been acting strange." I had noticed it too. Father was exactly as we left him, still staring blankly at the candle by the window, watching the wax melt slowly and pool at the base of the white stick. Taking the cloth from Sander, I dried myself as quietly as possible. Suddenly, Father turned from his seat at the sound of us throwing the dirty water out the window. "Are you boys done?" Father asked. "Yes, Father," we replied in unison as we headed to the table. Good. Take a seat." Then, we sat down on either side of him, eyes fixed on his troubled face, waiting for what he needed to say. He looked at us heavily. "I think it would be best if your mother joined us. Sander, please go call your mother." My brother nodded and pushed himself up from the table, heading toward the door. As he stepped out, Father quickly grabbed my arm and pulled me closer. His voice was low, thick with urgency. "Whatever happens, promise me you'll look after your brother. Always protect your family. Promise me, Ivan." Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his silver hair fell into his face from the sudden movement. "I promise," I exclaimed, brow furrowed in confusion, studying the panic etched deep in his features. Before I could ask what he meant, Zander returned with Mother, who entered quietly and sat beside Father. The flickering candlelight cast nervous shadows as they exchanged anxious smiles. "Our family has never been liked by many people," Father began, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the table, ice flickering between us. "You boys know why, don't you?" "Yes, we do," Zander replied. "Mother was bought as a slave, and the townsfolk did not agree with your decision to marry her. And then there was the mysterious disappearance of our grandfather. They exiled us because of it." Mother offered a gentle smile before nodding at Father. "That is part of the story," Father said with a quiet sigh, leaning back. "Your mother was never a slave. She once lived in the town of Sander, and I exchanged shocked glances. Pisen was the great kingdom at the southern tip of Kaya Broth, once lush and thriving with thousands of people. But 60 years ago, it was overthrown by Luther Vossen, a ruthless ruler wielding a magical crown called Hedis, created by the Watchers of Kaya Broth. The Watchers were a council of one from each humanoid race of Kaya Broth, protectors of the land. They made Hedis to defend the continent, but Luther stole it to create an army and conquer Kierbroth, ushering in a dark new age. The Battle of Pisen raged for days, with creatures and warriors from all over fighting to defend the city from corrupted kin. But despite their efforts, the city walls fell. Luther and his armies poured in, slaughtering many and scattering survivors. One who did not survive was Igrus, the Arcanist, one of the most powerful mages and a watcher charged with guarding Pisen. In a final act of redemption, he cast a devastating spell that destroyed Pisen and everyone who hadn't escaped, sealing away the evil. Luther was defeated, but Pisen has since remained a ruin, feared by all who dare not venture near. "Were you there during the Battle of Pisen?" Zander asked Mother wide-eyed. "I was," she said quietly. "I escaped just before the city was destroyed. I lost my family to Luther's armies and wandered alone for days until a slave trader caught me and sold me to your grandfather." Her eyes flickered with a fragile hope. "Why have you never told us?" I asked, curiosity burning in my chest. "The story isn't finished," she said, her hope fading as she looked to Father. "Your grandfather was no kind man," Father said, taking a deep breath. "He hated our relationship and tried to get rid of your mother before things got serious. But she became pregnant, with a daughter. The room fell silent, grief washing over our parents' faces. What happened to her? I asked, voice barely a whisper. Your grandfather rejected her birth, Father said grimly. Against our will, he took her away when she was just 6 months old. We never saw her or your grandfather again. We searched for months but found no trace. He exhaled sharply. We believed they perished on the road. His voice trembled. That was until a few moments ago. Father reached into his pocket and pulled out a dirt-stained rolled parchment. He unfolded it and began to read aloud. Dear Hay family, I have always known you were out there, and I have always known where. Guided by my master, and knowing you believed me dead, we avoided contact until absolutely necessary. Your family is in grave danger. It is crucial you pack your lives and come to meet me as soon as possible. I will wait for you at the aberrant tower in 5 days, when the sun is directly overhead. Please make haste. Your lives depend on it. Amelia. Father passed the parchment slowly around the table, letting us examine it. Zander leaned forward, eyes darting across the inked words again and again. This could be anyone, he said finally, his voice tense but uncertain. Anyone could have written this. How do we even know it's real? Because, Mother replied softly, her gaze distant. Besides your father and me, your grandfather was the only one who knew her name was Amelia. Father nodded. She was hidden from all visitors. No one knew of her existence besides the 3 of us. I looked from the letter to their faces, my chest tightening. Then whoever wrote this must know us. Deeply. Maybe too deeply, I swallowed hard. When was it left? Father drew a slow breath. It must have been placed there while we were out slaughtering the sheep, and your mother was tending to Chester and Hazel. When Sander came to fetch you, I found it waiting on the doorstep. He paused, his eyes lowering to the parchment, as if it might whisper more truth if he stared long enough. Whoever left it was in a hurry. There were no tracks, no sound. Just this. The candlelight flickered against the letter's edges, the crimson wax seal glinting like a drop of blood. Even if it's a fake, we need to know if she's out there, and what danger we might be in, Father said at last, his tone resolute but weary. Your mother and I spoke about it before you boys returned from the fields. We've decided to go to the aberrant tower and find out what this is about. This is ridiculous, Zander burst out, his chair screeching against the floor as he shot to his feet. The light from the hearth caught the sharpness in his expression, a mixture of anger and fear. Even if it's real, the tower is 5 days away. We've got nothing but Hazel and Chester, and they can't carry the 4 of us halfway across the Bell Bay region. His voice rose, desperate now. You can't make that journey alone, and definitely not on horseback. And what danger is she even talking about? Danger from what? From who? This letter. It's a ruse, Father. It has to be. Someone's trying to lure us into something. He turned away, clenching his fists. I won't let you or Mother walk into a trap. Settle down, Zander. Mother's voice rang out, sharp and trembling with emotion. She rarely raised her tone, but the weight of her words filled the small room. She is our daughter, she said, her voice breaking slightly. And she is your sister. If there is even the smallest chance she's alive, we will take it. Zander's shoulders sagged, his anger faltering beneath the conviction in her voice. The room fell still, but for the crackle of the fire. each of them caught between disbelief and a fragile, dangerous hope. "We've made our decision," Mother said after a long silence, her tone steady, though her eyes glistened faintly in the firelight. "Your father and I want you both to come with us. We've spoken. We'll sell some of the sheep come morning and use the coin to buy a wagon that Hazel and Chester can pull. We'll hire a farmhand to tend the rest of the flock while we're away. No more than 13 days, 5 there, 5 back, and perhaps a few to spare. Whether you join us or not is your choice, but we would have our family together." Zander sank slowly back into his chair, the anger fading from his face, though worry still lingered. He looked from Mother to Father, then to me, searching for something certain to hold on to. At last, I broke the silence. "If this is what you've chosen," I said quietly, "then I'll come with you." Zander shot me a look, half surprise, half disbelief, before sighing heavily. "I still think it's madness," he muttered. "But if you're all going, I'm not letting you go alone. Someone has to keep an eye on things." Mother's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. "It is what we want," she said softly, her voice full of warmth. Father pushed back his chair and rose, clapping his hands together as if to lift the weight from the room. "Then it's settled," he said with a grin that felt like sunlight breaking through cloud. "At sunrise, you two will head into town, hire a farmhand, sell some of the sheep, and buy a cart. If all goes well, we'll be on the road by midday. It's about time we had a change of scenery." He nodded toward the door, his tone softening. "Now, help your mother bring in the meat so she can start dinner. We'll talk more on the road tomorrow. There'll be time enough for questions then. For now, let's enjoy a warm meal and a quiet night together." We stood and stepped out into the cool night air to fetch the meat Mother had set aside from the sheep. Inside, she worked quietly, and before long, the rich scent of roasting lamb filled the cottage. It was, I think, the finest meal I had ever tasted. No one spoke of the letter, though its weight lingered in the silence between us. Even laughter felt strange, forced, like something fragile trying to live beneath a heavy sky. When the dishes were washed and the fire burned low, we said our goodnights and stepped outside. The evening air was cool and sharp, carrying the faint hum of crickets and the soft rustle of trees. "I think I'm going to take a walk," Zander said, pulling his cloak tighter. "Tonight's been a lot. I need to clear my head. Mind if I come?" I asked. He gave a small nod. I could use the company. We followed the path down toward the fields, past the grazing sheep and the fences glinting faintly under the moonlight. Finally, we sat on the low stone wall overlooking the valley, where the town lights shimmered like scattered embers in the dark. For a long while, neither of us spoke. "We've always talked about adventure," I said at last, my voice low. "Maybe this is our chance." Zander tore absently at a blade of grass, eyes lost on the horizon. "Maybe," he muttered. "But let's say, for a moment, that letter was true. What kind of danger could she mean? Who would even want to harm our family? The villagers, maybe, trying to push us out again." The question hung in the night air. I had no answer, only a chill crawling across my skin. Then, without warning, the darkness behind us bloomed with violent light. A flash, then another, larger. The ground beneath us glowed red as if the earth itself had caught fire. Heat licked the back of my neck. The smell of smoke filled the air. We turned in unison, At the crest of the hill, where our cottages stood, flames clawed at the sky. The fire roared hungrily, swallowing the walls in a matter of breaths. Sparks danced like dying stars, carried by the wind across the fields. Zander's breath hitched, horror tightening his face. "The house," he whispered. My heart thundered in my chest. The world seemed to tilt, every sound swallowed by the rush of fire. The danger the letter warned of was not distant, not imagined. It was real, and it had already begun.